Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Curtis, and I am a member of the Provider Outreach and Education team here at WPS. With me today is my friend and coworker, Aline Sigler. She's going to be helping me out by watching the chat for any questions that come in or any issues that you may be having, as well as providing information and links when needed. You've seen her adding some stuff already today. I've been holding some monthly webinars to show the different functions available within the WPS Secure Net Access Portal, or SNAP. This is most commonly referred to as the portal. This month I'm covering the appeals and the appeals reconsideration function. My goal is to increase your knowledge of these functions in the hopes that it'll make your job easier and more efficient. The portal team has also done some work by completing a full rework of the forms, which was completed on March 23rd of this year. So if you haven't submitted any appeals requests recently, hopefully things will be a little bit more user-friendly. I also want to let you know that the examples included in this webinar were taken from a test environment, so these are not real scenarios. I also am telling you in case my screens look a little different than what you have. I don't have access to production because it's not something that's needed for our job. And our test environment isn't going to have the variety of situations that you may encounter. So I just want to kind of put in that little disclaimer before we get started today. Now, during registration, I did have some participants indicate that they were new to their position. So before we get too deep into the functions that can be performed, I need to talk about portal access since you will need to be registered to perform the actions that we're going to talk about today. When you visit the WPS homepage, there's going to be this large blue box, and it's going to have our logo and the portal login box that you see here. Now, if you click around on other pages, then that logo is going to disappear, but the login box is going to remain. Under the user ID field, you're going to find a link to register. So I've outlined that in red on this slide. Also, I want to point out over to the right under the green login button is also the portal user manual, so that can be used to help you through the functions within the portal. Now, when you click register, you will be asked to accept the terms of use for the transactional area and the general area. The transactional area refers to specific actions that take place within the portal, such as data transmissions or user interaction. And the general area is broader and it refers to things such as data privacy policies or copyright information. After accepting the terms, you will be moved to the provider access page, which is shown here on the left. Here you're going to enter your MPI, PTAN, and TIN. If you are part of a provider group or clinic, then you must enter the group MPI and PTAN. You will not be able to register using an individual provider's information. When you self-register, a request will be sent to the MPI administrator for your facility or office who will need to approve or deny access. So this means that you're not going to be able to log in until your request has been approved. You can also have your MPI administrator create an account for you, and this is going to eliminate that approval process, so those extra steps. There's also a possibility that you're going to receive a message about registering as an NPI administrator, and that's shown here on the right. This occurs if the MPI entered has fewer than 5 administrators. So if you don't get this message, there's no reason to be concerned. There's nothing wrong. It just means that you've already got at least 5 individuals in your office or in your facility that are in that MPI administrator role. If you are not the appropriate person to take on this role, You can select the No Radio button and continue with the registration process. Now, if you accept the role as an MPI administrator, there is certain financial information that must be provided. So you must have access to patient, payment, or claim information that would appear on a remittance advice that has been issued within the last 30 days. Now, the portal does have three different access levels. There's eligibility, standard users, and MPI administrators. Eligibility users have access to verify patient eligibility and contact customer service. So this whole, submitting an appeal or requesting appeals reconsideration, that's not going to be a function that would be able to be performed at that level of access. Now, the picture shown here is of a standard user's homepage. The MPI administrator homepage looks similar, except they have an extra function that's titled Users, and that appears on that practice card between the My Profile and the customer service functions. The appeals option that we're going to cover today is going to be on that transaction card, and it's going to be, we're talking about the fifth and the sixth function down those fifth and sixth buttons there. So we're going to start out by looking at how to submit an appeal. Then we will cover the appeals search function that I have outlined here. It can be found on that transaction card for standard users and MPI administrators. Now, the portal has many functions that are related to appeals. Users can submit redetermination requests on claims. Part A users who submit claims in the Fiscal Intermediary Standard System, known as FIS, can submit reconsideration requests, which are the second level of the appeal process. You can check the status of requests that have been submitted in the portal, as well as those that have been mailed or faxed. Now, when you request an appeal, there are some guidelines to follow. For Part A claims that are billed on a UBO4 or an 837I, the claim should be in a finalized location. If your claim is offline, it will need to be retrieved before a redetermination request can be made. Now, just a heads up, this does require a weekend cycle, so you'll want to keep that in mind when you're checking to see if a redetermination request can be submitted. The claim should contain all the services that were provided. And lastly, if your claim is rejected with an X in the tape to tape, you can resubmit your claim. Claims with an X in the tape to tape do not post to Common Working File, so submitting a new claim is the best action that can be taken in those situations. Now, for Part B claims that are billed on a CMS 1500 or an 837P, your claim should also be in a finalized location. Appeals cannot be submitted on unprocessable claims. Instead, you should submit a new claim. If you're unable to request a redetermination, you are unable to request a redetermination if you do not accept assignment on the claim. And finally, if your claim has a W status or if it has been denied with Edit 119D, an appeal cannot be requested. So requesting a redetermination looks a little different for Part A claims versus Part B claims. Here you see the claim detail of a Part A claim. To get to this screen, you're going, you will find, you'll find the claim that you want to appeal using the claim search function, and you're going to select the I icon that is located under the Actions header. This is going to display the claim detail screen. Now at the bottom of the screen, you're going to find Claims Action, the Claims Action section, and this section contains options of actions that can be taken on the claim. Now, available options are going to appear in blue. and options that are not available to be performed on the claim are going to appear in gray. So on this slide, you can see that the request redetermination action is outlined in red. So if you click on that button, it's going to begin the appeal process. There are a couple of warnings that you could receive. The first one that you see here on the screen is to let you know if the claim has to be sent back to medical review to handle as a reopen. This also lets you know that the decision that you receive is going to come from the medical review department and not the appeals department. The second warning shown here makes you aware that a redetermination has already been requested for the claim, and it asks if you wish to proceed. That is something that you really want to make sure that if you've already requested a redetermination, you don't want to request a second one. It just causes extra work and delays processing. So if we proceed through, then the request redetermination form is going to open. There is a notice at the top that lets you know that Part A clerical error reopenings cannot be submitted through the portal. Adjustments should be done using direct data entry or hard copy submission. You will want to review the claim information to verify that you are appealing the correct claim. Now next, you're going to be asked if you are appealing the entire claim or specific claim lines. Here you can see that the specific claim lines are shown, so you could select the checkbox for the line or the lines that you are wishing to appeal. At the bottom of the slide are two freeform boxes. The first box is required, and it allows you to explain why you do not agree with the initial determination. The second box is optional, and it allows you to enter additional information that you would like Medicare to take into consideration. Now, if you are resubmitting the redetermination more than 120 days after the initial determination was made, you are going to receive an alert that your appeal is late, and there's going to be an additional box that's going to appear in between the two boxes that you see here, and it's going to ask you to include your reason of why you are filing your request late. Now, the next is going to be the provider information and evidence. The contact information will be auto-populated from your portal account, but you might want to review it for accuracy just to make sure that everything is correct. You will then choose if you have evidence to submit. Now, I want to call your attention to the little blue banner. It states that evidence must be included at the time that you are requesting the redetermination. So you will want to make sure that you have all your records ready at the time that the request is made. Once you mark yes, then you're going to have the option to upload files. Requirements regarding the attachments are provided. You can see them listed here. If you have multiple files, they can be placed in a single zip file. Please remember to disable all password protection, macros, and external links before you attach that file to your request. Now at the bottom of the form, it's where you're going to provide your electronic signature. The system will default to the radio button in front of the I do not accept. So you will need to review the disclosure statement and indicate if you agree to the terms. You can then select review in the lower right corner to review the information. Once you hit that review button, you are going to have options to either submit the form, edit the data that has been entered, or cancel the request without submission. Once you click on submit, then there can't be any changes made to the form. Now, once you hit that review button, the the portal does scan the form to make sure that no information is missing. So by the time you hit submit, everything should be correct. And the portal is going to display a confirmation message of a successful submission along with a tracking number. And that number can be used to check status throughout the process. So that'd probably be something that you'd want to notate somewhere, just kind of keep track of that number. Now, here you can see the claim detail for a Part B claim. The view shows a few more claim action buttons than what we saw on the Part A claim. And this is also a good example of showing when you have action items that are action buttons that are not available. So those are in gray, and then the ones that are available, of course, are in blue. The request determination action is outlined in red. Again, that is going to begin the whole process of submitting your redetermination request. Now the redetermination request form is going to open, and you can see that it looks a lot like the Part A form, except there isn't the additional notification at the beginning. Now for Part B, your first question is going to be if the request involves an overpayment. So if you select yes, then this is going to notify Medicare to pause all pending collection activities until the redetermination has been completed. Underneath that, you're going to see a list of procedure codes that were included on the claim, and these are going to appear in the same order in which they were listed on the remittance advice. You'll want to select the checkbox in front of the service or services that are being appealed. The Part B request also has the two free-form boxes that we looked at before. The first box to explain why you disagree with the determination, and the second box for additional information. Like the Part A request, if it is past 120 days, then you're going to get that additional box that asks you to include a reason as to why you are filing late. Now this, for the Part B provider information, this will also be pre-populated, but you're still going to want to make sure everything's correct and that no changes need to be made. Next, you're going to be given the opportunity to attach evidence to support your appeal. Remember that documentation cannot be submitted after the request is sent, so you'll want to include everything at this time. At the bottom of the form, you're going to need to indicate that you agree with the terms listed. Selecting review is going to allow the portal to check for missing items and for you to review the information that is entered. You'll then, if everything's correct and you're ready to go, you'll click submit. And you'll also have the options to either edit or cancel, as with the Part A form. And then again, you're going to get that confirmation of a successful submission along with a tracking number. So now that we've gotten all that done and you've got that tracking number and you know it's submitted, let's talk about checking appeal status. So from the home page, you're going to click on that large button that's labeled Appeals, and the Appeals search screen is going to open. Your first option is to choose from requests that have been submitted outside the portal, so something that you faxed or you mailed in, and those that have been submitted following the process that we just talked about on the previous slides. So first, we're going to look at searching requests that have been submitted through the portal. Your search must start with either the tracking number that was received in your successful submission notification or by entering the submission date range. Now, if you're entering a date range, you can also use the additional fields to narrow down the search. So this would include an MPI, and once you select that MPI from the drop-down box, it's going to auto-populate the practice name and the address. You also have the status of the request, so that would be things like if it's been completed, if it's in process. There's a little drop-down list for that also. Uh, if your appeal is a Part A claim, you can enter the appeal number. And then additional fields are going to include the Medicare ID, the PTAN, the claim number, and the subcategory. Now, the drop-down box for the subcategory is going to include a Part B appeal request, a Part A appeal request, a Part A reopening, and a Part A appeal level 2. Now, for non-portal submitted requests, the fields are going to look a little different. So here you will need to enter your MPI, which will auto-populate the practice name and address, the patient's Medicare number, their first initial and last name, and then additional fields that can appear are the claims date of service or a claim number for Part B claims. Now, requests that meet the criteria that were entered are going to appear in the results section. There is that little free form box above the results section, and that can be used to narrow down any results. You can also click on each of the titles that are listed in the blue header, and that's also going to sort those results that you have. Results are listed showing the tracking number, subcategory, claim number, Medicare ID, status, submitted date, and then the action column is going to have that little eye icon that's going to allow you to view the record's detail. Now, I wanted to show you some examples of different decisions so that you're going to be familiar with what's going to be displayed. Here we have a Part A favorable decision. So at the top of the request, you can find the tracking number, the Benny and provider number. It lists the type of appeal. So this example is a level 1 redetermination. Next is the status, the decision date, claim number, and the MAS appeal number. So MAS is the Medicare appeals system, and that's kind of a repository for Medicare appeals and their related data. So that's what that number is going to be related to. Now to the right, you're going to see a little gray box where the decision is shown. So in this example, the decision was favorable. So the box shows a green circle with a check mark. And below the details, you're going to find the decision. In this example, it lists that the decision was favorable. Now there is a blue banner, and that banner does contain a link in case you want to find out more about the second level of appeal rights if the situation applies. Of course, in this one, it's favorable, so that's probably not something that you'd be interested in. Next is the information from the initial request. So the 3 fields that you see, those first 3 fields are going to correspond with those free-form boxes that we looked at earlier. Why you did not, excuse me, 1 second, please. Okay, sorry about that. Why you did not agree with the initial decision, additional information, and the reason for making a late request. Then at the bottom of the detail screen, you're going to find links to the supporting documentation that was submitted in the redetermination requests. Now, a favorable decision for a Part B claim looks similar, although there are some differences in the detail information. The decision field looks similar, except where you have an appeal response, which lets you know more information will be provided in a future remittance advice. This is followed by that link for the second level appeal. You then have the appeals data information, and then at the very bottom would be again the attachments. Now here we have an unfavorable decision. So you can see here that the gray box has a red circle with a line through it. In the decision section is a decision letter that has been attached. Along with the second level appeal right banner is a notice that a copy of the decision letter has been sent to the beneficiary. Again, you still have the appeals information in the attachments. That's similar with regardless of what the determination was. Now, I did want to take a look at that decision letter that came with the unfavorable decision. I wanted to point out some important sections of that letter. So the first section that I have outlined is the decision. Here you will be given the determination that was made by our appeals department. They're also going to list that the provider or who's responsible for the cost. In this example, you can see that it says we have also determined the provider is responsible. Um, Next is what to include in your request for an independent appeal. So it's going to tell you if you want to go to that second level, what information should be included when you do that. And lastly is a note that you do not need to resubmit documentation that was already included in the redetermination request should you want to have that second level appeal. WPS does forward any documentation that you've submitted along to the quick. So you don't have to worry about gathering all that information. You just want to take whatever additional information is going to support, medical necessity, things like that. That's what you're going to want to send to the quick. So next we have a partially favorable decision. I'm not sure how well you can see, but the little decision box has a circle and it's divided in half. So one half has an X and the other half has a check mark. Here, the decision section again does contain a decision letter. All other notices and fields are the same. And some important information that's included in that decision letter is going to be an explanation of the decision, who is responsible for the bill, and again, what to include for an independent appeal. So in this example, the provider is informed that if they choose to request a second level appeal or a reconsideration, they ask them to submit the operative report. So I just wanted to show you some examples where there could be different information in these fields and in these letters. Now, if a request is dismissed, the decision box is going to contain that same red circle with a line that was found on an unfavorable decision detail. A decision letter is attached for further information. And the decision letter has sections for missing information where our appeals staff can let you know what information was missing from the initial request. And there's also a section for our staff to communicate if the request was invalid and why. Um, The letter also provides you with actions that can be taken. Your request must be filed again if it has been 120 days or less since the initial determination. Or if you disagree with the dismissal, then you're provided with two options. You can request to vacate your dismissal or ask for a reconsideration of this dismissal. And then the letter is going to provide you the address for the quick if you choose to proceed with one of those options. Now, the last function that we want to cover today is appeals reconsideration. This function also has the option to search portal and non-portal submitted reconsiderations. Selecting the portal submitted option is going to display fields to enter a submission date range or a tracking number. Additional fields to narrow the search are provided. Here you're going to notice the subcategory is auto-populated to Part A Appeal Level 2. This is because submitting a reconsideration through the portal is a function that's only available to Part A claims that were processed through FIS. You also have a little button here that says My Submissions Only. So if you have access to multiple MPI numbers, um, and you don't want to see what everybody else in your office or in your facility has submitted, you can just click on that and you're only going to see the ones that you personally have submitted. Now for non-portal submitted requests, you will need to enter your MPI, which will auto-populate the practice name and address, the patient's Medicare number, the first initial and last name, and then the start and end dates for when the services were provided. Requests meeting the criteria entered will appear in the search results. Again, you have that little free form box above where the results can be narrowed. Like the redetermination search, you can click on each of the titles listed in that blue header to sort those results that are being shown. Results are listed showing the tracking number, a subcategory, claim number, Medicare ID, status, submitted date, and then again we have that action column which contains that eye icon to view the record details. Now the reconsideration details looks the same as the redetermination detail screen. You have the claim details. So in this decision, or in this example, the decision is not available. There is a section for the decision where a letter can be attached. You also have the information from the appeal request and links to the documentation that was attached. Now, I did receive a couple of pre-submitted questions that I'd like to answer before asking Aline if anything came in through the chat. I would also like to promote a webinar that is being held on May 6th, which is Medicare Appeals Forum, Your Questions Answered. Aline and I did a webinar earlier this year where we had a question and answer session with the appeals department, and we had such a great response, and you guys had so many questions that we're going to hold it again. So we're going to have another question and answer session with the appeals department, and again, that's May 6th, so that is something that's available for registration. Now, for the pre-submitted questions, I did get a question about timely filing an appeal and what type of attachments should be included. Now, I will say that if your claim originally denied for being past the 12-month deadline, so if you're talking about a timely filing denial because you didn't meet the original 12-month deadline, that is not appealable. So there is some information on our website about timely filing denials. Those do have to be submitted hard copy to our claims manager, and you would have to include documentation as to why you did not meet the initial 12-month deadline. Now, if you're talking about being past the 120 days to request a reconsideration, CMS does provide some examples of good cause. It's found in their online manuals, and basically what they have put in those manuals is that a good cause would be um, if you got incorrect or complete information about the subject of the claim, or an appeal was, and if the incorrect information came from an official source such as CMS, the MAC, or the Social Security Administration. The other example that they give of good cause is unavoidable circumstances that prevent the provider, physician, or supplier from filing a request that is beyond your control. And what they've listed as examples in the manual is like natural catastrophes. So they listed like tornadoes, floods, things like that. Um, so I realize that that's kind of narrow, but that's what CMS has provided as good cause for missing that 120-day deadline. The other question that I got that I wanted to answer was, how long does it take for appeals to be approved or denied? Our appeal staff does have 60 days to make a decision. And that is one other thing that the appeals department has brought up a lot, is that they get a lot of duplicate requests. So providers aren't waiting that 60-day time frame before they're submitting another request. And we also know that some providers may have software in place so that if a claim denies, it just automatically submits a request for reconsideration. So that's something that our appeals department does struggle with, is getting all these duplicate requests. It's a lot of paperwork. So you really do want to do everything you can to make sure that you wait that 60 days. We talked about checking status in the portal, so that's always an option to look there and kind of see where your request is in the process and when it was submitted. Okay, so the other pre-submitted questions I think I was able to answer within the presentation. So I will turn it over to Aline to see if we have gotten any questions that have come through in the chat.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for that information and giving us a look into the portal and how that all works. We did just get a question from Kate. I haven't had a chance to read all the way through it, so bear with me. Kate says, I work the TPEs. So targeted probe and educate, our medical review requests. Sometimes we will submit records for the TPE and not receive a TPE results letter for several months. By the time we receive this letter, the claims have been denied by individual ERAs, electronic remittance advices. I've tried to appeal with the TPE results letter, but my redeterminations were rejected for timely filing. How can I get my appeals reviewed when Medicare delayed the review results? We rely on the TPE results letters for specific denial reasons beyond the generic CO50 medical necessity denials on our remittance advices. So this is related to appeals, but how can we help them, or how can we instruct them on how to get those TPE results without waiting for the letters? Can you speak to that?
That is a great question. Uh, this is something that I would like to take back because it involves TPE, and that information comes from our medical review department, and that's kind of a different process. I would like to take that back, gather some more information on the TPE process and how that kind of works in with what you're doing. And I will send a answer out. I can send that to everybody that's in attendance today just so that all of you have that information in case this is something that you come across. But that is a great question. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, and Karen, if I might just add here too, this would be a good reason for using those self-service tools. Signing up for the portal so that you can watch your claims and see the results. With the mail system being what it is, then sometimes that does get delayed. And so if you can get that information as soon as possible without waiting for the letters, that would be my suggestion. I know that's not always possible. So Karen's going to look and see what we can do to maybe get that updated and expedited in some way to make that process more clear for you. I don't see any other questions, Karen.
Okay, and thank you so much for that additional information, Aline. I appreciate that. This is We're adding this slide to our presentations because of a request from our financial department. WPS does receive many overpayment notifications and refund requests from providers. We know that you want to repay Medicare in a timely manner. However, there can be delays if you use an incorrect or outdated form. Missing information or sending checks without explanations are another reason that can cause delays. So to avoid unnecessary holdups, please consider using the WPS Secure Net Access portal like the refunds or the overpayment claim adjustment features. This does allow for fast and efficient processing of your overpayments and refunds to Medicare. There are times when you are not able to use the online portal features. Instead, you may choose to send paper requests and checks. If so, we recommend including the correct form that's available on our website. I'll have Aline place a link to the article on our website to help you determine which action or which form to use. Now, when you disconnect from the webinar, you will be redirected to a CMS survey. I'm also having Aline add a link in the chat. I really do hope that you'll take a moment to provide feedback on how I did today. If you're watching this as an encore, you're going to see a pop-up at the end of the webinar, and that's going to have the little picture that says survey. Now, the redirect is going to look like what you see on the right. We don't have any control over how this appears, so we just want you to know it isn't spam, it's nothing malicious, so that it is a safe site to go to. Now, the feedback that we received does lead to changes. We've added chapters to our encore presentations in YouTube. We've added training indicators to the description of our webinars, so that will help you decide if the material is going to apply to you. We've also held 2 Medicare education expos that are based on suggestions for future education topics. We are currently planning a 3rd one that's going to be held in September, so watch for details for that. I just wanted to provide some examples so that you could see that your opinion really does matter, and we try to use that to make changes. Now, after disconnecting today, you should receive a thank you for attending email, and that's going to contain contact hours that can be submitted for continuing education units. If you joined only by phone, WebEx is not going to generate this email, so you will need to contact us. In the chat, Aline's going to add a link to the education mailbox and what information is needed for us to send a certification certificate to you. Now, if you think of any questions, those can be emailed for up to 7 days following today's event. That does bring us to the end of today's presentation. So on behalf of myself, Aline, and the Provider Outreach and Education team, I'd like to thank you for being here today, and I hope that you will join us for future events. You may now disconnect.